Welcome to the Blueprint to Success interview series, providing unique blueprints, tactical knowledge, and best practices to navigate the critical points in the football ecosystem so athletes and parents can prepare a plan to a career path that any athlete can bank on. Today we have a special guest, special episode, someone who I looked up to, going through the recruiting process, growing up in Pittsburgh, same area. I actually made it a goal of mine to play an All-American game after I seen him playing. He was playing with guys like Reggie Bush and all that good stuff. Ended up attending University of Michigan and West Virginia University before getting drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 6th round. He crushed the league stats and averages for players and played 8 years while on his way to being a Super Bowl champion. Following his playing days, he earned his MBA from the University of Miami before jumping into the entrepreneurial investor world, where he's had great success launching, running, and selling companies. Well, now he's the founder of a groundbreaking company, Alkeme Health, looking forward to making a global impact in the mental health in the Black community, which is powerful and needed. Let's welcome Ryan Mundy.
What's up? What's up?
Man? How's everything going?
I'm good, man. It's Monday. Happy Monday. No pun intended there. Which is always funny because sometimes announcers, specifically Chris Collinsworth, would always say Ryan Munday. And that used to irk the hell out of me because there's no A in my name. But
right.
About it.
Oh man, that's true. So when we get into it, man, like you've been a prime example of someone that's used like the sports ecosystem or just sports in general, specifically football, as a catalyst to a career you can bank on. What advice would you give your 16-year-old self to prepare for them for the football life and journey?
I think about this question a lot, and there's two answers here. Like me personally, I wouldn't tell myself anything, right? Like just the nature of who I am. I'm like, look, you need to figure it out and explore and like trust your gut throughout this whole process because I love where I am and I wouldn't change anything for the world. But specifically, like just general advice to up and coming athletes is really just to know yourself, right? Like I think a lot of times we forget about self in our journey to accomplish whatever we want to accomplish. We're so pre-inclined or inclined to be what other people want us to be, or be what we think will make us popular, or be what we think is the right thing for us to be. But the reality is there may be a disconnect from what people expect of us and what we actually are. And that gap produces a lot of insecurities, anxieties, depressions. I mean, the list goes on and on. So the message is to just make sure that gap is as small as possible for who you are and what people expect of you.
I think that's great advice, like diamond gems right there, because when you just talk about like knowing who you are, because it's funny when we talk about we're going to get into the recruiting process, but when guys are getting into the recruiting process, you're 13, 14 years old. It's like that prime development age where like you're kind of finding yourself, right? Like you're finding yourself when people are starting to shower you with attention and different things of that nature. And that's where a lot of guys kind of find their true self in football, right? Where their identity kind of gets warped up into this sport or this figure. We know how that kind of goes into different things. So like, I think that was a great answer, just kind of closing that gap in who you are, because there's a lot of different stimuli going through this process, whether it's on the field, off the field, and not knowing where you are, you can fall into some dishes. So jumping into the recruiting process. Yeah, got to be careful. Jumping into the recruiting process, you're somebody that transitioned high schools, right? Like started off at a school in Pittsburgh called Central Catholic and then transitioned to Woodland Hills. How was that? I mean, you're talking about an all-boys school and then transitioning to like a powerhouse like Woodland Hills.
Yeah, so for context, like I grew up in inner city Pittsburgh on the west side and had went to Pittsburgh public schools my entire life. And so, played in like the city league, did all that, and, was really good, had that trajectory. And just knew that like my dad didn't want me to go to Langley pretty much. And Perry was an option, but, Central Catholic showed up on the radar. And so going to Central was quite the contrast for me. I'm coming from a Pittsburgh public school, co-ed, and even in middle school, I went to a creative and performing arts middle school, Rogers Kappa. So half the day I was, in English and math, and then the other half of the day I was doing art, like virtual art. art history, clay, all that stuff. And so coming from that environment and then going to a Catholic school, I am not Catholic, in an all-boy Catholic school, it was a lot. It was a culture shock for me. And so, it was definitely different, a good experience, kind of. I coming out the gate, I was a starter, and we played North Catholic the first game, and I got beat on a play, and I never started a game again. And there was a little bit of politics behind that. The coaches, one of the parents was upset, but long story short, played JV that whole year, and as a true freshman, and was crushing it. Was getting like 2 ints a game, and kind of looked at the equation and said, like, do I want to stay here, or do I want to like kind of take my talents elsewhere? And this was a conversation that was driven by my father. And this conversation came up because my dad was a track coach at Woodland Hills for the previous 2 years. And so like in 8th grade, he would pick me up from school, that middle school, and he would drive me to track practice at Woodland Hills High School. And so I would see guys, and he was coaching these guys like Lusaka Polite, who went on to play in the NFL, Shante Spencer, who went on to play in the NFL. Like, I was seeing these guys live in action in 8th grade running on the track. And so I was like, man, these dudes is ballers. Like, I want to come here and play football. You know what I mean? And that's when we had like the for real powerhouse at Woodland Hills. And so, the stars aligned. My dad was already a track coach at Woodland Hills. Things didn't necessarily materialize at Central Catholic from just like a personal dynamic, and then like the athletic portion of it really wasn't lining up for me either. So we just decided to make that move across the city and join that Woodland Hills family. And it was one of the best decisions that I wasn't in charge of that decision, but I played a big part of it. But it was a really great decision that helped a lot of things unfold for me.
Yeah, man. When you talk about that, like, I mean, just even from context of your story, like Lusaka Polite's dad, he was my coach when I played for Woodland Hills, and growing up 8th grade, going to the games, going to see Eric, seeing Shante run around and all that stuff. That was always like my gauge as well. So it's funny you say that. And like when you were transitioning or transferring schools, nowadays these guys, they're moving schools all the time. Like, your primary reason was it to get recruited, or was it kind of a comfortability thing?
No, it was definitely, comfort. Because even it's funny because, how we used to go to like passing camps. So I was still at Central during the first half of the summer going into my sophomore year. And we went to the Pitt passing camp, like Junko, Walt Harris. Like, I had an offer from Pitt while I was still at Central Catholic, and I hadn't played a down of football in my sophomore season. So it wasn't necessarily driven by recruiting. But it was like, kind of roll with the winners, like, like who's balling over there. And, it was a really good. And it's funny because I seen those guys. We didn't play against Woodland Hills at the Pitt passing camp, but I literally saw that whole team while I was at Central. And then like 2 weeks later, I was up at the high school working out with them.
Oh, wow, man. So you get into that. So you were getting recruited when you were at Central. So obviously you had it. Was that your only offer? Was the Pitt offer?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you got to Woodland Hills, how was your recruiting process? Like, if you just kind of take me through like the holistic aspect of it, like how would you sum up your recruiting process?
Specifically from a recruiting process, it was one that was a great opportunity because we had, my sophomore year, we had guys like Tyree Young and Brendan Banks and Monte Murphy, and all these dudes was, getting recruited.
Right.
In the junior class, Steve Bresson, Kareem Dutrell, all these guys getting recruited. And then, we had a strong sophomore class. And so like there was an opportunity. You knew that coaches were coming there. And even if they weren't coming there to watch you, they would see you play. Right. And so that was the magic that we had at Woodland Hills. And it was a great experience. And we had a very powerful program. So from like a recruiting standpoint, I know I benefited from that. And I know a lot of my other fellow teammates during that time benefited just from like the credibility of the program, the credibility of the coaching staff, and then ultimately like the validation and the work that the players ahead of me and before me were putting in. Like there was a long pipeline, right? And so like even dating back to, again, like Lusaka, Tutu, Shante, like all these dudes was ballers, bro.
Right.
And so like, that coaches are coming and they're looking for the next version of that. And it was just a really special time for us. And, it worked out really well.
And so when you say that, because it's like you said, you're getting recruited, everybody around you getting recruited. And then when I went to Woodland Hills, I felt that same thing. It was like, oh, it's just kind of, that's the one in ninth grade, that's the one in eighth grade, that's the one
Every
here.
class had
come up in middle school, and it's kind of slotted. You know who's going to be, know who's going to be next. How did that make you feel, like in terms of? Because I didn't feel like it produced a culture where people rest on their laurels, because it was a highly competitive environment. So like, you were up next. It was almost like the confidence, like, no, I got to walk with this like on my shoulders. It wasn't like, how was that experience? Like knowing that when you were up, like you were going to be the guy. Like that was kind of came with the thing at Woodland Hills. Like if you were going to be the guy, like you were expected to be the guy. Did you feel any pressure with that?
Nah, you weren't. You didn't feel pressure because you had prepared to be that guy. So when it was your turn, like, I had 2 years of it, like, and I saw how the guy handled it before me, right? And so, it was something that I think a lot of people look forward to. Definitely myself, you know what I mean? Like, specifically for the offense that we were running, like we ain't throw the ball. So I'm like, God damn it. Like it's finally my time to shine. My senior year, like Steve, I think I only caught maybe like 15 passes from Steve in 2 years. Yeah, gone. Right. And so like my senior year, I'm like, man, I'm getting all the shine and all the balls. And so it was, from a pressure standpoint, it was just something that I think a lot of people look forward to. As like a rite of passage and a privilege to, be that next guy in line to carry on that tradition. Now, don't get me wrong, there's pressure with that for sure, but like the environment that we were in, that was something that people look forward to, and we were conditioned to do that.
I would agree 100%. Because like when I transferred from Woodland Hills to Gateway, I mean, I don't know if people know, like I went kicking and screaming. Me and my pops got into big arguments because like what you're saying is like, all right, I heard Novak say, like, I'm going to be that next one up. And I'm like, no, that's my spot. Like, you're going to take me over here. We got to kind of build this thing over here. It's like kind of what you say. It's like, nah, I'm just getting ready for when it's time to be ready. And it's an interesting perspective because when you go other places, guys are like always wanting that spot, and be like surprised when they get the spot and they're not ready for it. So like, When did you know, like going through that process or just recruiting, that it was like a serious business?
Good question. It honestly really didn't show up until after I signed. And here's how it worked. We talked about like had an offer from Pitt my sophomore year, or before the sophomore season, played this sophomore season, got some recognition, had a few other offers. And then my junior year, same thing had happened, got a lot more notoriety, got an offer from Michigan. And from there, it was like, cool. Like it was really hard to beat Michigan. Like I wanted to go to Michigan.
Yep.
And then fast forward, and the person that I was getting recruited by was Terrell Austin. So Terrell Austin was a DB coach at Michigan, recruited me, and he's from Pittsburgh and like a distant relative of mine.
Right.
And so signed on the dotted line for National Signing Day, early February. TA calls me like, not even 2 weeks later. He's like, hey, man. Yes, exactly. Hey, man, I'm taking a job with the Seattle Seahawks, but you are in good hands with the organization. And I just wanted to call and let you know. And, I'm like, I had just turned, I think it was still 17. I was like, man, what the hell? Like, you leaving? Like, you were part of the deal. Like, you're not supposed to leave. Like yeah, exactly. And you're my family. Like, what is happening? What is happening? But that, the ink wasn't even dry on my national letter of intent. And, my recruiting coach pieced out on me. And so that's when I realized, like, hey, man, this is quote, a business, and people are making decisions based on their livelihood, not because they think you're a good football player. That there's correlation there, but ultimately, like they're doing what's best for them every day of the week.
Protect the program at all costs, man. That's real, man. Like that's a hell of a way to find out that the process is serious. Like like you're already signed and all that stuff. Did you feel like the recruiting process accelerated your like maturation process? Like just from getting recruited, coaches coming in, like did you have to keep a level of humility, or did you just kind of feel like, all right, this is just kind of part of it? And,
I always had that level of humility and just kind of like a even keeled demeanor about myself. So I didn't, get too big of a head, when Florida or all these other schools started calling. and talking to me. I just always just try to make the best decision and say like, look, what's going to set me up somewhere where I could go play, a big time program, and then ultimately like where I could get a good education and kind of mature. What you're talking about, that maturation process. I knew that wasn't going to happen for me at Pitt. Way too close for home,
right.
And I was looking for a space to kind of ultimately spread my wings.
Gotcha. That's real. Did you feel like prepared emotionally, like going through the recruiting process?
No. Especially back then, it was a different time. Like,
right.
What is an emotion back then? But overall, I just think, the process in itself, I think, needs to be evaluated because there's just so much, and this is just college in general, like there's just so much pressure to make the right decision at 18 years old that will set you up for the rest of your life. Like how, I didn't even know what I wanted to study in college. Like, how do you even know that? Like, there is no way that I knew. So just from like a level of preparation and maturity, and also from an emotional standpoint, it's really, really hard, right? And emotionally, I knew I wanted to kind of spread my wings and mature and develop, but outside of that, you don't necessarily know what that looks and feels like. Because I saw a lot of guys that freshman year in college, they was getting homesick. Like they wanted to go home. And these are dudes that was from Michigan, like 45 minutes away going home. I'm like, bro, like I live like 4 hours away. But everybody has their own journey. But the overarching thing, I do think there's a huge opportunity to like prepare the whole person for college. Yes. As opposed to, solely focusing on what they're bringing to the table physically.
I completely agree, especially when you start dealing with the different dynamics in college sports. Now we talk about the recruiting process, speeding up the maturation process, or guys not being emotionally prepared. And when you said your initial, advice is having a true sense of self, right? When you're going through this process now, I mean, they're not shy about wanting you, whether it's a photo shoot when you go to the school or,
right.
Sitting in front of a Lamborghini in a Porsche, so like all those different things. And you got Twitter, right? So you got fans that can get in contact with you, tell you they're greatest, or tell you suck if that were to come. And so you got to deal with all those different things. So it's even more emotionally tumultuous. Like when I see players going through it, and a lot of guys kind of fall off on that, just kind of end up chasing ghosts, right? Like
I can't even imagine doing that now, bro. Like. What? Like everybody is watching you and has a voice and is commenting on your game at like 16 and 17 years old. Like we didn't have that when I was in high school. And even when we were in college, like Facebook was just now coming around, and you still had like wall posts, but it is nothing like it is now. And back then, like some people would comment on your game, but it is like elevated to a whole nother level right now. So I can't even imagine what some of the young athletes are going through.
I tell people that we were the era of message boards, where a little bit of you had to like kind of go search for for message boards. I'm like, can you imagine getting DMs from the message boards like through your thing? So I always have like a level of respect for those guys, kind of keeping it all together. And on the other hand, they're being told that they have to be accessible to get NIL deals and different things. So there's just a lot of things that again I get sticky with that. So you said your dad was a track coach, so I was assuming multiple sport athlete.
Yep. Ran track. I started running track probably at like 11. Me and Andrew, we was running track, together pretty much from 11 to college.
Was it track only? You play basketball too?
No, basketball's not my thing. I played baseball a little bit, but there was like a scheduling conflict with track. And so I just opted for track and made the decision solely based on like what's going to help me be the best football player. And by far, my background and experience in running track paid massive dividends and really prepared me to become a better football player for sure.
That's 100%. That's real. Because I got a quick story about Mundy, and even Andrew Johnson, who he's talking about. And the thing, we all ran track, obviously in Pittsburgh. And, you run different stuff and ran for a team. When I was the same way, running track to get ready for football. So I wasn't really competing. And they were like, hey, there's these guys coming. One wears an all white suit and the other one wears an all black suit. I was like, what you mean? They were all white and all black. Man. It was like, oh, it wasn't black night. I'm like, man, what? They was like, they play football. I'm like,
classic, bro. That was classic.
Y'all came out burning up the track. I'm like, I got big fast people too, man. See, that's why I gotta be out here, dog. So, and people always ask like, oh, growing up, like my speed. I'm like, man, I wasn't the fastest growing up in my area, dog. Like,
man, you had to when I think back, bro, those were some good times, man. Some really, really good times. But we were a little bit forward thinking with the long sleeve, Under Armour dry fit, the long sleeve tights. We was running, sprints in those. It was kind of fresh.
That's like 99, like 99, 2000, 98, running full bodysuit like the Allison Felix. I mean, way ahead of the time.
It was dope. It was definitely dope.
So you said you were running track to get ready for football. So obviously you had an understanding of what metrics that you needed to hit and like be good at football. How informed did you feel going through the recruiting process?
As it relates to like my stats.
As it relates to just like what was going on, right? Like, all right, I'm going through the recruiting process. I'm going to be judged on my 40. I'm going to be going this. Like I'm picking schools based on X, Y, and Z. Like, did you feel like you had a wherewithal what was going on when guys were sending you letters and recruiting you?
Nah, to be honest, not really. I didn't really run a 40. I went to the Nike camp one time. I think that was like my junior year. Okay. And didn't really, I guess, get tested on metrics too much during my recruitment. It was just solely based off of like film and play. And so that was really my focus was like, look, man, am I putting up, I guess from a stats standpoint, like, all right, how many catches did I have? What's my catch touchdown ratio, et cetera. But I was always focused on going out there and making plays. And if I was making plays and like people would see and notice that, but I wasn't too hung up on like either performance metrics, like the 225 test, or I don't know what they do in high school. Is it 185? Like never did that really. It was just solely like, bro, just go out there and play football and ball out.
So when you did get like multiple schools coming after you, how are you narrowing down your decision? I guess that's what I'm asking, like how informed, like when you're picking the different schools, are you like, all right, I'm going to SEC playing this type of defense, or I'm going to go to Big Ten, or you just wanted to go to Michigan? Like it was that kind of
just wanted to go to Michigan. I mean, we had a solid scheme at Woodland Hills, but even again, like from a scheme standpoint, like there's, I think, been a huge wave and evolution of like playbooks that have just trickled down into lower like high school, et cetera.
Right.
Like, we were very basic in high school, very basic.
So like can do that.
Yeah, like I didn't necessarily know or think about like what type of defense that I wanted to go and play in. I honestly wanted to play wide receiver in college, but everybody was like, nah, bro, them days is over for you. And I was like, do you not see this tape? Like, bro, I'm out here balling. But they were right. They were right 100%. But it was solely for me as it relates to like the criteria that I was using to make a decision on a school. It's like, look, who's playing well right now? I didn't have too much of a long-term thinking view, and I was like, who's playing well right now? Okay. So that's why I took a visit to NC State. NC State was playing very well at the time. Right. They had like T.A. McClendon, a few other dudes as well. They put some ballers out. I took a visit to Virginia. Virginia was playing very well at the time, right? Like they had Michael Johnson, Daryl Blackstock. They had a lot of dudes. And so I took official visits to those two schools. And they were good schools and good visits, but it was solely based off of like, who's hot, where's my opportunity, like who's showing me love. That was pretty much what I was using to like filter my decision.
A little emotional though. Like it was like, who's showing me love? It wasn't like,
like who's showing me love? Like, are you a Nike school? Like, gotta check that box.
Yeah, that's what we would say, emotional evals. We don't want to do emotional evals. Like you get stuck on a nice visit, they throw the blue chip treatment at you. Next thing you know, you committed in Mississippi somewhere. That's how they get
there. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. I mean, but I was looking at like the area too, right? Like again, I knew what was important to me. I wanted to get out of Pittsburgh. I wanted to kind of explore. Both of those schools were a little too rural for me, a little too like small, slow town. Ann Arbor was like the perfect blend of like kind of city feel, but like college campus, in addition to everything else that I learned along the way there.
Well, your appetite was right? Because you land on a place like Michigan, where it's like I always say, you know, when you come out of school, you can kind of line up all the players. Like if you're in the NFL, for say, like line up the players. You kind of pick what schools they went to, and I always felt like Michigan had a good rep from being in the NFL and how guys carried themselves after football, and just what that process happened at Michigan. You know what I mean? I always had a lot of respect for that. So kudos to that aspect. Were you thinking about, I mean, you said it was kind of going how you felt a little bit. Were you thinking about post-football career at all when you were selecting in colleges?
Nope. Yeah, that's couldn't think beyond that. It happened during my time in college. I started to think about that, but like entering into college, and you hear these things like Michigan has a great alumni network. You don't know what that means at 18.
That's what made me ask, because like that's like a school where I was like, and this is like a top academic school. Like, to be honest with you,
like you hear these things, but you have no idea how you're going to realize that value, right? Like, so they tell you these things, and from like my reflection back, like it just kind of fell on deaf ears. Like, yeah, I hear you, but I don't know how to network. What does that mean? What does I'm going into college, and you're talking to me about the alumni base. Don't know why that matters. You know what I mean? Like, again, the level of maturity and just like the preparedness to make an informed decision, I think has come a long way. But like back then, like those were things that I didn't necessarily take into account in making the decision. But once I got to campus, you know, you start to feel it a little bit more, and better understand throughout your time on campus.
Oh, that's real. That's a great answer. What was your best visit throughout that process?
I had a great visit at Michigan.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
That's what's up.
Really, I went to it was a Michigan State game. And I chose that game because I wanted to be Charles Rogers. And so it was Charles Rogers versus my man, Marlon Jackson.
Yeah.
And, it was a legendary matchup, man. Legendary matchup. But I was a huge Charles Rogers fan. I had a great visit at NC State too. You know, a little bit of like backwoods country down there, but they showed me a good time.
Oh, that's cool. I always a big Marlon Jackson fan growing up. They played my cousin one time in Josh Lay at Alkeme in the state playoffs, and they were like, "Oh, he's going to Michigan." I mean, I was at that. Charles Woodson was my favorite player, and I'm like, "Oh." So it was like the Sharon boy went up there and started playing. He had the black. If you watch my high school tape, I used to tape my socks inside of the thing, black tape, because of the boys up there. So you just check it out. It was really, really impressionable on me.
Legendary dudes. Josh is a legendary dude.
That was some big time stuff right there.
Man, these kids don't know, bro.
You talk about the visits too, man. Like I remember Florida going down there messing with Lil Wayne with those boys. You talk about the different areas. It's like cultures at schools are different, fellas. Like,
different, very different. And I think that's probably a really important, you know, when you talk about like knowing yourself, like knowing like where you're, like what works best for you, right? Like that, what culture is going to bring the best out of you is really important to evaluate as well.
No, that's real. So what's the key takeaway that you would lend to anybody that's kind of going through the recruiting process now?
The key takeaway?
From like when you went through the process, like, you know, like what you learned from it.
I would say, you know, in summation, based off of everything that we talked about, think long term. You know, like don't see past, you know, the photo shoot visit, see past the, you know, whatever they do nowadays, the hype videos, like see past all that. Because more times than not, like you don't get that stuff once you go there. Yeah, like it's a whole different experience, right? Like, so their process to get you there and your experience there could be two totally different things. And so like you need to think long-term and holistically about the journey that you're about to embark on.
Man, that's perfect. Cause I talk about times the 30 to 40 year decision when you get to that point, man. Cause that's what it is. You start making those connections, you're going out, you're working. It's like a lot of your connections probably come from Michigan.
And it's an important time. Like my best friends to this day are my teammates from Michigan. Like, you know, I got a few friends from the NFL that I keep in contact with, but primarily my boys are the people I went to college with.
That's real. That's true. So we transitioned to college. So coming from a top high school program, how was that transition to Michigan? I mean, you say that you felt ready, like you kind of had the pressure. I mean, not the pressure, but the spotlight on you coming from a talent-rich area in Pittsburgh, and you go to Michigan. Like, how is it?
Yeah, I think it was physically I was ready, but I think I needed to make a mental jump.
In which way? When you say mental jump, like in the playbook or like just overall getting yourself ready as a football player?
Getting myself ready as a football player. Like it's a level, it's a mindset around competition. Like, you know, at some point, like we were the best athletes on the field. Like, you know, you could go out there and kind of do your thing, no sweat, right? Like, but once you get to a collegiate level, it's like, oh, like everybody's good around here, right? And like you kind of gotta have a little wake up call, like, oh, like, you know, I need to figure out how to compete differently or raise my level of my approach towards competition. And that, I think that was a case for me, you know, stepping foot on campus, like, you know, those dudes are big, strong, and fast, and they've had a level of training and they've been in a different environment for 3, 4 years, right? And so that mindset and that body type is a very different, right? And I always tell people that the biggest jump for me personally was coming from high school to college, not college to pro.
Gotcha.
Because again, that weight room does something to you immediately once you set foot on campus. And then also from a mental standpoint, it raises your game and heightens your awareness on like how you need to be showing up in all facets of your game, practice, game, training, etc.
Man, that's real because like you get there, like you said, there's other top safeties, there's other top DBs, guys that do multiple things. You kind of look around. My last interview, my roommate Derek Williams talked about how he wished he had more competition in his room because when he got to the NFL, he felt like there wasn't enough competition in college for him to get ready. But like you're saying, you go to places like Michigan and everybody's tight. You got to like kind of raise your level up. What was your welcome to the Big Ten moment?
Probably my freshman year during two-a-days. There's one thing that just like sticks out to me, and it's not even a football moment. But I was on the sideline, and you know it is extremely hot in Michigan Stadium, and this is when they just laid down the artificial turf. Like so, like people just generally didn't know how to like prepare or like play on that type of stuff. And for whatever reason, the turf was hot as shit. And so like I was pouring water on my feet and my feet were like steaming up. And I wasn't even paying attention to what was going on because we were running a scrimmage. And Coach Jim Herman, he was at least like 25 yards away from me. He yells at me, "Hey, Mundy, what's the play?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he said, "Get your, you know," dropping all these F-bombs on me, like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, oh shit, like, ain't nobody ever really talked to me like that or coached me like that. And that's, you know, just a moment in time that really sticks out to me of like, you know, you're not technically in Kansas anymore, right? Like, you know, and that's like, again, the mental approach of like, you know, making sure that, you know, you're ready to show up.
That's big. Like being locked in, I think that is like that mental stamina, right? When you're in high school, you're used to like, all right, when I'm done, I'm kind of off. I can jump in when I need to jump in. Like somebody asks you, like, what's this play? You like, you start saying stuff. You like, oh man, like what's going on with this guy?
Yeah, he caught me. He definitely got me.
Nah, that's real. That's a good one because that does make you recognize, especially coming from like somebody like yourself that's pretty sharp about stuff. It's like, wait, I'm all like, I don't know something that someone's asking me pretty quick. Like that will tighten you up.
Yeah, but that, you know, when you think about your game and you think about like holistically, how are you becoming a better player? Like, you know, getting those mental reps, right? Like knowing what the play call is, watching your position and saying like, all right, let me get a mental rep. Like I wasn't doing that. I'm sitting there pouring water on my shoes and shit.
Pro.
Yeah, got to be the pro. Got to be the pro.
That's big. So like a place like Michigan, you know, it's a great academic school. Like everyone like around seems to be focused on school. I mean, Michigan they were rolling at the time when you guys went there. What was the culture like within the football program and how it fit into the university?
Yeah, it was from a purely football point. We had some really, really great dudes, high quality guys, and also very, very talented guys. You know, like I played with dudes like, again, Marlon Jackson, Braylon Edwards, Chris Perry,
Right.
like Steve Breston. Like, bro, we had a squad. Like, you know, Mike Hart, like all these dudes. Like my recruiting class, we only had 14 people. Half of us went to the NFL. We had a #1 pick. Jake Long was the #1 overall pick.
Yep.
Leon Hall was my college roommate. He went first round. I played in the league. Prescott Burgess, he was a #1 safety in coming out of high school. Lamar Whitley, who else? Sean Crable, Clayton Richard played professional base. Like, bro, we had some ballers for 14 people, and so like
Car years.
Yeah, exactly. Prime Lord Carr, prime recruiting. But from a culture standpoint, like, you know, we had some really, really good dudes, really talented guys. And that time period where you're kind of coming into manhood, you know, you're transitioning from like being a boy to a man, like you go through some things with people,
right,
both on and off the field. And one of the things that I finally look back on is that brotherhood that was established. You know, whether it be like on the field or, you know, hanging out or everything in between, it was a very, that's what I'm looking for, like tight-knit group, if you will. Like and it wasn't manufactured. Like it was just like generally they recruited a certain type of player. And when you get a bunch of a certain type of players, and like that's where the chemistry happens and magic happens, etc. And so all in all, we had some high quality guys, high character guys. We didn't have like a lot of off the field issues. None of that type of stuff really showed up in our program. So overall, it was a really good experience. How that transitioned to like us showing up on campus, those are two whole different stories, right? Sometimes at a lot of schools, but thankfully, you know, for the most part, we didn't have like the elitist nature from football players specifically as it relates to the broader campus community, particularly in the Black community, which is really important. And when I look back, it was a really special element for me personally, because we were very proactive in inserting ourselves and finding community with other Black students on campus and not always just hanging out with the football team. Like me personally, I never wore my sweatsuit class ever. And so, you know, that's like big.
Wait, can you talk about that a little bit? You said you never wore your sweatsuits to class, never wore your sweats to class? Mm-mm. That's pretty big. So if people don't understand, you go to college campuses and a lot of different things like that, you know, it's very regular to see the athletes wear, you know, their team issued gear to class. Man, you see it in the NFL with the rookies when they get there to try to show everybody that they're on the team. But like kind of like pointing to the point, like he got dressed, it seemed like, to go to class out of place, man. I think that is something, there's something to that. Like when you just kind of go into like transitioning like a true college student and not operating in a bubble of being an athlete. Because then the student body starts to treat you like a normal person, right? Like they start to treat you like an athlete, then you can kind of use that networking that's available to you.
Yeah, like they'll treat you how you show up, right? And more times than not, you know, they already have a preconceived notion about you because they know you're an athlete, right? So like you're not on the defensive, but you have a responsibility or an opportunity to kind of show them the other side of you and show them that you're, quote, more than an athlete. And so my way of doing that was I never wore sweats to class. Like, you know, and not just like getting fresh. So like that's the other side of it too. But I never wore sweats. I never wore sweats, bro.
I feel it. I think, I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, we had rules at Penn State. We couldn't have facial hair. We couldn't have long hair for kind of the same reasons, right? We had to tuck our shirts in and do all that when we were in the football building and moving around, but kind of how you present yourself. And that's critical, especially we talk about the critical advantage that you noticed when you got to Michigan. Was that kind of one of them? It was like, all right, this is like a true opportunity to, you know, get my intellectual like on point, getting integrated into the student body. Like, what was a critical advantage that you noticed when you got there?
What do you mean by critical advantage?
When I say critical advantage, like you get to a place like Michigan where you felt like, all right, like you say, there's like a special community amongst the Black people, or there's like, this is like a strong school that I can like really lean into this group of people and like make connections for the rest of my life, or opportunity to start a business with these guys. Like when I was at Penn State, for example, we started seeing like a lot of people that were like connected to like powerful people or like the different associations, people like their alumni that would come back, and it was like, oh, you get in here, like you can really make some serious connections. So you had to kind of lean into those critical advantages that school provided, right? Because I think Michigan probably had different gifts or different things than USC versus Florida or Miami, right? So what was that critical advantage at Michigan?
I think just the prestige of the program. I think everybody was very conscious and aware of. We always there's an element of like being at Michigan. You're like, this is Michigan, right? And we do things a certain way. And when you're a Michigan man, like certain things are available to you. You don't necessarily have a definitive answer on that, but like, there's kind of like a code of like, look, like this is Michigan, bro. Like, and we do things differently across the board around here. So I don't know if there's one thing specific that I would call out, but just a general essence of, having the opportunity to wear the maize and blue. I think everybody understood what that meant and what that could provide to them, both on an individual and also on a collective level. So that would be, I think, the critical advantage of saying like, look, if you could do it at Michigan, you can do it anywhere, right? And I truly believe, regardless of your stature on the team, that was something that you really believe to be true.
Is that something that they kind of helped you guys with? Like, hey, sit in the front of the class when you go there, or maybe don't wear sweats, or talk to the people outside of the school? Or is that kind of just like the people that they recruited?
I think it's the people that they recruited. But again, things are a lot different than they are now. And I want to highlight too that, like it wasn't always a bed of roses at Michigan.
Sure.
There are elements that I do think have improved, like helping players realize their potential off of the field. That was not a thing at Michigan. Like, basically your schedule was designed around like what can make you available for football practice and keep you eligible. And that is not the way to take advantage of going to one of the best universities in the world, right? And there was an element of like, oh, if you're going to, pursue an engineering degree, then what about football? Like, those things happen, unfortunately. But overall, I just think things are a little bit different now, and to the better. But like back then, it was just a different understanding.
It was different. I think like for us both playing for like coaches in college that kind of been at the university for a long time, you, Lloyd Carr, me with Joe Paterno, there's a level of like when they're recruiting a certain type of player, they're able to get that mixture in there, right? When you were at the Steelers, when you have those staffs and different things that have been there a long time, they're able to get the makeup of the player to kind of operate similar after a level of longevity of being together. And that's like a byproduct of it. And so like, you see that a lot now where you got a lot of coaches moving around and it's kind of individual hired hitmen. So you got like a lot of different guys. If there's not the same mentality of the program, you get a lot of jumbleness and like teams not operating together. So I think that's what you're alluding to, like just not unknowingly, but like those staffs that were together and you guys having that same type of player that coming through the program is so critical in college because, like you said, when coaches leave and different things like that, you guys still be able to produce wins and operate in Michigan to where, you guys are still holding up the tag of being a Michigan man and all that good stuff. So that's very critical. And I love that you talked about that. Being a businessman like yourself, like you see like the whole college landscape now, what would your NIL strategy be for yourself? You're in college right now, Ann Arbor. I can make some money. What's Ryan Mundy doing?
Selling merch or figuring out the NFT token strategy and pulling together, like, here's a good one, right? Like NFTs, you can make them up pretty much, right? And the value is based off of whatever you're going to get whenever you have that NFT. A lot of people are talking about like digital art and you're just buying it. They have no idea what they're buying. But the real opportunity, I think, with NFTs is what you get and what you can experience. And so if a critical mass of players were able to come together at a university, create their own, like token in which they have like private meet and greets and private experiences and giveaways and all sorts of stuff, I think that would be interesting. So yeah, Probably
But he
like
just
an
gave away
NFT
$1 million
strategy.
idea, fellas. If anybody's listening in college, like these ecosystems are crazy. You get 1 million people
it's
coming to
fire.
see you. He just gave game. He should have charged for it, but I don't know.
That's just, I think it's something that I just made up, but I think it's really interesting. Or even thinking about like tokenized moments. Like, let's use Braylon Edwards for an example. Braylon had 3 touchdowns in like 5 minutes of a triple overtime game, you know, back in 2004. Like, how can you package up those moments and, you know, sell them? You have to probably get some sort of rights.
CLC.
Yeah, stuff like that is interesting. Yeah,
College licensing. Yep, they have all of it. They own it once they get archived through NBC and all that stuff. So they're there.
Yeah.
They just want.
What they don't own is the experience, right? And so, like, how are you able to? And they don't own your jersey.
Oh, you can buy it off them. That's all I'm saying. They can license it out.
Oh.
Like, you can get it.
Oh,
oh yeah, you just gotta pay.
Yeah, like stuff like that would be super interesting.
I mean, that's a great idea. I mean, we got the group up at Penn State to lock down you, but as soon as what you said was like merch, right? You're getting into that, the monetization points within like a college ecosystem or a stadium economic impact plan. Where's the money flowing? And like you said, like everybody's coming to watch these guys. You go to a Michigan game, everybody kind of has things on. If you kind of slither out your area, I mean, the NFT, that's taking it the next level, but it's very, very strong. Georgia did something similar where they had a group kind of put together like a collectible joint for the national championships. And I think each player got about $30,000 after they sold all of them. So that is something to be grown on. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what was your most memorable part of your college experience?
Man, so many. And to be honest with you, a lot of them are off the field, which I think is really important too.
That is important.
But on the field stuff, I would say
it doesn't have to be on the field. I mean, it's a holistic, like just overall college.
Yeah. I mean, graduation was really important for me. Neither one of my parents graduated from college, and so that was definitely a goal of mine to graduate from the University of Michigan, which I did, and very proud of that moment. On the field, when I got my first interception versus Miami of Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, my sophomore year, first game of the season. Nervous as all get out, but went out there and played really well and got my first interception, and it was a memorable one. Made like the daily news and all this other jazz. So yeah. I'd say that was pretty memorable too.
Making plays on and off the field, graduating, getting that paper, and getting that pick, getting on the field.
Got to get the paper.
Got to get the paper. I mean,
do not leave college empty-handed. Don't do it.
Listen to them. Listen to them. It's not just for play. We're not just saying it. Don't
please.
Do it.
So I'm going to go back. Don't leave empty-handed. That is my advice. Do not leave empty-handed. They will get everything out of you. What are you getting out of that experience?
What he said, times 1,000. Yes, get something. Like, they're going to get what they need to get out of you. And like he said, he got that he graduated and all that stuff. And we got to kind of you transferred, right? You transferred to WVU as a grad transfer. Can you take me through that process a little bit? Like, what made you lead to going to West Virginia?
Yeah, for sure. And so basically, long story short, I started my sophomore year, all 12 games. Come back junior year, expectations are through the roof. I have an injury during training camp that effectively puts me on, quote, IR for the whole year. Had some opportunities to try to come back, didn't necessarily materialize. And so I was proactive in my health and wellness and said, like, look, I can't play this year because I only have one arm, basically. Yeah. And the advice to me was that, like, you need to sit and rest. And coaching staff had other plans for me. They said, well, we're not going to just let you kind of just chill out this year. Like, you're going to run scout team wide receiver. And so my junior year of college, I was running scout team wide receiver, effectively on one arm. And yeah, that didn't sit well with me. And needless to say, I had some exchanges with the coaching staff. And also, I will add, I was killing the defense. I was literally killing them. One, because I knew how they were getting coached.
Right.
So I was doing everything to beat their coaching. And then two, I was just genuinely pissed off. And so like I would go out there and let them have it on a weekly basis. But needless to say, you know, 1 year, starting free safety on the team, following season, I'm running scout team wide receiver. And so that's where the rift in the relationship started. Came back my senior year and got my starting spot back, but they were looking to move on from me anyway. And went through some ups and downs on that season. Ohio State game comes. We lose as a team. I don't have my best performance. I go into Lloyd Carr's office, and he pretty much says to me, I don't know if I have a scholarship for you next year. And caught me way off guard. Like I knew we had beef, but not that much beef. You know, particularly, again, for what I've done for the university, the recruits that I've brought in, model student athlete, like, bro, was really good. And so I didn't take that sitting down. I said, all right, like, cool, this is what you want, I'm out. And the reason why I said I was out was because I was watching a game, and it was a Florida game, and Urban Meyer was at Utah the year before. And then he went to Florida, and he brought one dude with him. I forget, he was a cornerback. It was Ryan something. But he transferred from Utah and went to Florida. And for whatever reason, I was watching that game, and they were talking about the graduate transfer rule. And I was like, what is that? And so I was like, oh, this is something that is interesting, right? And so I started that process, did some late work, and this is December of 2006. You know, effectively told the Michigan staff I'm out. And after the Rose Bowl, because I went to the Rose Bowl that year, and I was like, I'm out. But what happened was the NCAA did away with that rule in January. Oh. Yeah, exactly. And so, bro, like I had already told Michigan, like, peace out. They thought I was stuck. I didn't have any other options. And so from January until like April, you know, that was probably one of the hardest periods of my life. I was working out at the Student Rec Center. I couldn't go to the building and work out. So I was on my own workout regimen. I was dialing for dollars, calling the Michigan alumni for, you know, I was making $10 an hour doing that, you know, and then people were hanging up at me, don't call me during dinner time, that type of stuff. And I was writing letters of appeal, getting letters of recommendation, phone calls to the NCAA so that I could effectively be grandfathered into the graduate transfer rule.
Oh, wow.
And so at this time, there's no portal, there's none of that.
I was about to say, you're like the first person that experienced the portal ever. Like,
yeah, like I'm pre-Russell Wilson. Like I got to be like I wasn't the first, that's what I do know, but I was probably like within the top 5 of people who took advantage of that rule.
When I say one of the first where you thought you were leaving and you were like in that like purgatory type space where it's like, I don't really know. Cause like that hasn't happened until the transfer portal.
I've never heard of anybody like kind of being during that specific time period where like the rule was in place, and then the next month they say, "Nah, we ain't doing that no more." Like I don't know if it was probably just me. Like, and so I had that unique distinction. But there was a catch to the rule, right? Like, and so this is why it's really important to make sure that you know, you're taking care of your business in the classroom, because I was always doing that at Michigan, right? So I talk about graduating being a very important part of my journey. Had I not been taking care of business my freshman year, my sophomore year, and my junior year, I would have not been in position to graduate in 4 years. And if I was not in a position to graduate, that means I could not be a graduate transfer. You need to graduate in order to transfer. And so like when we talk about like all this stuff works together, you need to make sure that you're handling your business on a daily basis. That's why. And so long story short was I got grandfathered in. I graduated in it was like late April, and then 2 weeks later, I'm in Morgantown, West Virginia, training with the Mountaineers and getting ready for the 2007 season. Oh my
goodness. That's crazy, man. Like, so like, I mean, I guess you're a fan of the transfer portal then, right?
Yeah, I'm all for it, but I didn't have it. I had no idea what was happening, bro. Like, man, I'm telling you, like this, my hair was falling out, bro. I had alopecia from stress. Like I literally had a bald spot in my head at 22 years old because I didn't know where my life was going to be headed. Like it was wild.
And like that really was the transfer portal before the transfer portal. And I'm asking you because like guys do jump in it, and we hear it all the time. Guys jumping in and they get a chance to open the recruiting back up, and sometimes they get stuck in there and they're just like in there and they can't go back to work out with the team. You're just at the university And cats don't know really what's going on. And it's just like, transfer portal, man, at your own risk. But like your everything that you did and why you transfer, I think was like very strong. Like making sure that you understood your body, understood you took the word from the coach, and you kind of played it where like, all right, I'm gonna stay in the captain's seat and I'm gonna move like this. So like even the way that you decided to transfer is something that like those are the steps to take it, like to leave a school. Because like sometimes nowadays, you have to
And the other option I had, I was like, man, should I just try my hand at the draft? Like I was draft eligible, but I was like, man, I'm leaving something on the table. Ain't no way. I couldn't live with that regret of saying like, look, man, like I had a year eligibility, but I did not exhaust it. Like could not do that.
Well, now that goes into our next thing, man. You transfer school as a grad transfer. Like how was the experience in terms of getting ready for the NFL? Like what was that like? Because you went there, you were there at West Virginia for what, 6 months?
Yeah, not even like 7. But man, like, when we talk about like good dudes, there were some really, really good dudes that welcomed me with open arms day one. At West Virginia, like Pat White, Steve, like we had a squad down there too. Like we was not half stepping.
No, we was
running. And I think that type of literally running, that type of training that they were doing down there, it was special, bro. Like it was literally the best training that I've probably ever had in my life.
Darius Raynor was down there too, right?
Yeah, D-Ray,
we trained all together. And them boy, when they came, I was like, man, these dudes like...
You couldn't keep up with them dudes. You could not. We could run all day, bro. And the strength and conditioning coach, Mike Barr, was hands down the best trainer that I've ever had. Oh, wow. We were fast. We were strong as all get out. And like, it was something special.
Shout out to him.
And so, yeah, for sure. And so that experience definitely prepared me from a body physical standpoint to take that leap into the next level. Because that's, if there is a knock on Michigan, the training wasn't like what you would think it is or what you would expect it. That level of training at West Virginia, man, it was a game changer for sure.
It was like explained it like Olympic lifting, like super
all that plyos, complexes. I mean, hills, like we were running, bro. Like you think that's why we could run like you think Pat, man, what, bro? We were running.
They were running. Hey, that's real, man. So you're there for 6 months, you get to the draft. Like, how was your draft experience?
Did it live
up to
your
expectations?
It was amazing. I just have to highlight, because when we talk about like unique experiences. So I talked about that Ohio State game. That was 1 versus 2, and the winner was going to the national championship. You fast forward to the following year, I'm at West Virginia. We have an opportunity to go to the national championship. All we got to do is beat Pitt. Pitt's going home. They're not even going to a bowl game. It's like Shady McCoy, like all the dudes is on the team, but they're trash. They weren't going to a bowl game. And so like we go out there and we lose at Pitt. It was like 13-9 or something like that. And we lose our opportunity to go to the national championship. I'm like, God damn it, this happened to me 2 years in a row. And then so the kicker on that is that like 2 days later, we're in a team meeting. Rich Rod comes up and he said, I'm taking a Michigan job. And everybody looks at me. I'm like, I ain't got nothing to do with this. Like, I left there. And so Rich Rod and his staff, they took the Michigan job literally like 2 days after that Pitt game. So, it's just like this weird sequence of events. And so when we talk about training for the draft, I was actually back in Ann Arbor training with the West Virginia staff at Michigan.
That sure was.
Yeah, it was crazy, bro. Like, very weird time. But the pre-draft, the pre-draft training, it was great. Pre-draft experience. I didn't get invited to the combine. I didn't participate in any bowl games. All I had was my pro day, bro, and I knocked it out the park. Okay. And so it was a one shot and kind of knock it out. But I did not do any combine activities. Wasn't invited, and did not participate in any postseason games.
Wow, I don't think I knew that. That's interesting. That goes to even show like even more what's impressive, right? When you talk about going there. I mean, Shante, I guess he didn't get invited and got drafted in the second round. It's crazy when people do that because that means the film stand out and like certain things, check the boxes. On actual draft day, not going to the combine or the different pre-draft things. Like, did the draft live up to your expectations?
Yeah, it did. I had a sense that I was going to get drafted. Like after my pro day. Like people definitely started to reach out because I had a really good pro day. And during that time, even at pro day, like the entire Steelers grass came down. So like Kevin Colbert, general manager, was there. Mike Tomlin came down.
Okay.
My DB coach, Ray Horton, came down. Dick LeBeau was there. Like all four of them was there. And in hindsight, it was like, yeah, we came down to see you. I was like, oh, shit. But yeah, I mean, the draft experience was cool. I had a sense that I was going to get drafted on the third day. This is back when the draft was 3 days.
Yeah.
No, was it 3 days? It was 2 days.
I think our year was the first year, like whatever the longer day was, because I missed the cut and I was remember being sick, like physically.
Yeah. So like I knew what time it was, and just kind of I got drafted on a Sunday, so I think it was still a 2-day event. But you know, I invited family and friends over during that day just to kind of sit and wait and watch, and eventually got that call. And during that day, like people were calling me saying like, "Hey man, like just want to make sure this is the right phone number." I'm like, well, it is. Don't call me anymore unless you're going to draft me. I got a few of those calls, but man, overall, it was a great experience to share with my family and friends for sure.
That's amazing, man. I'm happy that you're able to experience that, because like I always kick myself for talk about expectations, right? Because like I expected to go a little earlier, and I was sliding. So that's why I remember that year being the 3-day, because I was expecting something Friday night. So I remember being sick, right? Like sick, and then I was like, "Oh, Saturday got to be it." And it was like, "Wait, Sunday?" And I remember, I missed it all. Talk about being emotionally ready. I didn't even take in the moment until like I got through the process and realized like how special it was to even be drafted in the 4th round. Man. I was like embarrassed. Like I think back on it, it's like so stupid, but like I was like embarrassed for like the first month after I got drafted. But what was your welcome to the NFL moment? Get to the Steelers. It's like, man, it's the league.
Rookie minicamp. This is back when rookie minicamp was two a days. And I got thrown right into the fire with, you know, Troy Polamalu, Brian Clark, Ike Taylor, Deshae Townsend, B. Mac, Tyrone Carter. And, you know, they're out there doing all this like, fancy footwork, twirling, speed turning. I'm like, man, I ain't never did a speed turn in my life. Like, what is this new stuff? So it was definitely, I think, just that whole experience of getting a sense and feel of what it's like to be a pro and be around pros. That was definitely a welcome to the NFL moment. I'm trying to think of like a game situation, or not even minicamp too. Like, bro, I'm so old that the training camp 2-a-days were still in play.
Yeah.
So when you want to talk about like testing your manhood and testing your strength and conditioning, like try an NFL 2-a-day, like where there ain't no like, you know, shorts and like walk. Nah, bro. Like we practicing hard twice a day.
That was our first year. Yeah, that was the real.
So there's no specific call out outside of if you've done an NFL 2-a-day, like a real 2-a-day, then you know what's up.
Hey, had thoughts on my joint, like, man,
bro.
Thank God I got my degree, man. I don't know how long I can do this, bro. Like that is real. The 2-a-days, my toenails ripping off. I'm like, what's happening to my feet?
Taking all the reps, you know. And then like Troy, he only gonna do one practice, maybe, right? And then so like, who getting all the reps? The rookie. Man, we was running. That's
real, because you talk about even like growing up in Pittsburgh. So I guess like as soon as you get there, it is a little bit more of a welcome. Because I ended my career in Pittsburgh, but I remember getting there and I felt like I was more in the NFL than I ever been. I was like, oh, like to that point, it's like, oh, Troy, grew up in Pittsburgh. It's a little different. But
for sure.
You end up playing 8 years, man. I mean, much respect and congratulations to that type of career, because people don't realize it's always like, you know, growing up, I was like percentage, and I always play percentage when I go to camps. Like, all right. But like you realize it's not just about the talent. It's like kind of what you're saying, everything else, and like keeping that thing tight. And that really comes to grips in the NFL, whether your attention somewhere else or whatever. Like, what are the keys to having an 8-year NFL career and just kind of busting open the average?
Yeah, knowing yourself.
Knowing
yourself and what are you bringing to the table? Because at that level, everybody's good. And you know, Mike Tomlin told me something pretty profound early on in my career. You know, he was like, man, there's not much difference between an R5 and a Pro Bowl safety. But that small difference is a very, very big difference, right? And for those who don't know, the R5 is a guy who, again, back in the day, had to run down and bust a wedge.
Yeah, yeah.
And that NFL wedge, I promise you, is not something that you want to do. You want to be the pro ball safety. But, you know, I just overall, you know, thinking about that whole experience and like what allowed me to have a sustainable career was definitely knowing myself, where my opportunities were. And when I got opportunities, I always played well, and showed up as like a steady and consistent and reliable contributor to the team. That's really what matters is performance at that level. Like, everybody's talented, but not everybody can make the plays in a timely fashion, right? So when your number is called, you got to show up, because there's not much saving grace for those who don't show up. Like, they're looking for the next you, even if you are making those plays, right? Like the draft. Even if you are making plays, they're still looking at like how they're going to replace you at some point in time. And so in the NFL, I really felt like I came into my own, of like who I am as a player, what my strengths are, and I really leaned into that. And that's what really allowed me to have a strong 8-year career.
That's very important. People talk about that. Like, a lot of people don't get a chance to develop in the NFL because it's like it's always next go. And like you said, you were at Troy and all those guys, and like finding yourself, having that chance to kind of be a pro and like really learn the game and different things of that nature. That's amazing to see and hear about. I always respect the people that played in their hometown as a pro, and I always thought that was extremely hard. How was it playing for the Steelers growing up in Pittsburgh?
It was actually pretty amazing.
Really?
You know, yeah, like it was a full circle moment, because as a kid in Pop Warner, when I was playing ball on the West Side, like we used to go to the stadium, Three River Stadium, and walk around and ask tailgaters, you know, who were belligerent and, you know, just loud. We would walk around in our uniforms. This is like, you could ask Devin and Wes, like we used to, and Andrew, like we used to do this every home game. Like we would walk around like asking, you know, can you make a donation to our organization? Like we was the little candy bar boys.
Yeah.
Like, you know, those little candy bars, like, can you give us like $5 for this, you know, bag of M&Ms? That was us.
Right.
You know, trying to raise money for our organization. And I used to see, you know, the players pulling up in the player parking lot, like Ernie Mills, Greg Lloyd, Cordell. I used to see them, right? And, you know, they had the nice cars and stuff. And I was like, damn, that's me now. Right. And it's a pretty cool full circle moment. I've always had a great family and family support. So that was always wonderful. I didn't get bombarded with tickets like you may think.
Really?
Yeah. You know, people were generally very respectful of that process and didn't, you know, if they did want tickets, they were willing to pay for them. So it was actually pretty cool. And then winning the Super Bowl and then going to another Super Bowl at home, like,
yeah,
it don't get much better than that either. And so like all in all, the experience was amazing. And then on top of that, like the types of people that I was playing with, you know, like we just talked about a handful in the DB room. That was literally just a DB room. Right. And then we got like James Ferrier, Larry Foote, Lamar Woodley, James Harrison, Casey Hampton, Brett Kiesel, Aaron Smith, and this is just a defense, right?
And
then
we standard, move over to offense. Bro. That's like a standard. Like, you talk about anywhere you go, that's the standard, man.
It was a different time, bro. It was people did not want. They wanted no smoke with that defense. Zero smoke.
That's the same deal as I grew up watching. You know what I mean? Like they stayed together, like that chemistry and all that different stuff. Even when I came at the end, man, it was still like, oh, you see why it works. Like you get it. Like
that's exactly why. Yep. You got to be there to know. You got to be there to know it. It's really hard to explain, but if you were there, like you get it.
Exactly. And you got a lot of respect for that personnel department when you talk about like the talent they've packed up in that building. But that's crazy. How did it differ playing in Pittsburgh versus Chicago and New York?
Great question. From like an organizational standpoint, I thought New York was relatively similar. You know, good management, moderate degrees of success, not as much. Didn't have that continuity amongst the staff, which I thought was really important. Like Tom Coughlin was there for a while, but the staff had changed quite a bit. In Pittsburgh, the staff never changed, and they were there together for a while. The difference was in Chicago. When I came here, you know, it just it wasn't hitting the same. And it's still that, like, I tell people there's a reason why the Steelers have 6 Super Bowls and the Bears, you know, are still talking about the 85 Super Bowl. You know, an example of that would be like the Steelers have had 3 head coaches in almost 60 years now. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin, 60 years. The Bears have had 3 head coaches in the last 5, and probably within the last decade, maybe 5 or 6. Right. So when you keep saying it, like that continuity, that chemistry, like if you're going to build a program, like you can't be scrap ironing it, like, and you can't be piecemealing it together. It takes time and intentionality to do that. And that really showed up between those, between the organizations.
Yeah. That's a definite big one. Cause like, I always look at it, right? We talk, like you said, the longevity of the coaching staff being able to be able to put like a culture in place takes 4 to 5 years, and like getting the right players when you're talking about dynamic personalities, especially when you start talking in NFL. I mean, it's a microcosm of all the extremes in society, like with money, with talent, and where the talent has gotten them to the point where they're at now. So being able to manage all those things and kind of keeping it in a similar nucleus, I think you're speaking to that point when you talk about the Steelers. It's like a organized machine where you can kind of see a different player that's like, oh, he's like him, he's like that person. But everybody, I remember being at the Steelers and thinking like, oh yeah, football is extremely important to everybody here. Like borderline cats go off.
Yeah.
You don't have, you know what I mean? And that's intentional. I learned afterwards that that's intentional profiling of the player.
Yeah, no, you know, you have a type that you go out and get, right? And so like, that's why, you know, you never seen any of like the Flash or, you know, any of that type of stuff show up in the parking lot, or, you know, like dudes ain't do that. Like, you know, you come here, let's put in some work. And that's what really perpetuated and facilitated a lot of success that we had as an organization for an extended period of time.
So the league's pretty dynamic. We know it chews people up, spit them out for whatever different reasons, right? If they don't know themselves, they can get bad habits, good habits, whatever the case may be. You get to a good team, you learn great things from professionals, future Hall of Famers, and different things of that nature. What's one thing that you would say to rookie Mundy going into the league that you would say, hey, do it like this because everything that you know now going through the process of the NFL?
Yeah. Trust it. Trust it, trust yourself, trust your gut. It took me a while to get there. I think if I would have got there faster, maybe things would have, and I'm not saying it because I want them to be different, but like things probably would have worked out differently. But, you know, coming into the league, sometimes it's a little intimidating. And it takes you a while to like kind of find your footing because things are moving so fast. And,
right.
You know, you're trying to get acclimated, and then you have the additional pressure of like, look, man, this ain't college. Like they could get rid of me at any time for any reason. And I tell my team now, I'm like, man, there ain't no HR department in the locker room. Don't exist. Nah, you don't get that. So really just kind of trusting it and saying, go for it a little bit harder. Maybe the advice that I would give myself.
Okay.
Yeah. And just owning yourself, right? Like there was an element of like, man, and I had to learn this, you know, like if I go, because I was backing up Troy and Ryan. So when either one of them went out the game, then I was effectively replacing them. Yeah. And there was a period of time where I was like, man, I got to play like Troy, or I got to play like Ryan. Nah, just be Ryan Mundy. Yeah. And that's good enough. And that's why you're here. You know what I mean?
That's a big piece, man. And it goes into knowing yourself, right? Like trusting what you got going on. Because like I tell guys a lot of time, the NFL is not a place to kind of figure yourself out. Like whether on the field or off the field, because just a lot going on, man. We're going to take a quick break real quick, and I'm going to do this read. So does your son dream of playing college football at the highest level? Or maybe they just want to maximize their time playing sports and you want to give them every chance to succeed, but don't feel left in the dark when it comes to his futures and during this critical part of the football career. That's why we have the Recruiting and Football Business Masterclass, a comprehensive course that walks you through the entire recruiting process, football ecosystem, so that you and your son can navigate the waters and identify the critical factors for making the right decisions about his future. And his future is just as important as yours. We'll show you how to make sure that your hard-earned money isn't wasted on programs that won't bring success. During this masterclass, you'll learn how students student athletes are evaluated how to navigate the recruiting waters, how to navigate the new normal in college football. There'll be 23 videos taught by me, our blueprint for success, and the most common mistakes made by athletes and families going through the process. And that link will be at the bottom of this episode notes, and we are jumping back into it. So we talk about the transition and everything in football, right? Like the different critical points. So now we get to the post-football and your entrepreneurial journey. What's one word to describe the transition for you from football?
Hard. Super hard. Started playing football at the age of 7, didn't stop until 31. During that whole time, thought about, life outside the game. Talk about like the education. Like I got degrees, right? From multiple places. And, you think you're prepared. And to some degrees you are, but that emotional journey of like finding yourself beyond the game, and not only finding yourself, but having to walk the walk is something that I think a lot of athletes aren't prepared for. And so it's really, really difficult to make that transition. And just because you play longer or accumulate wealth doesn't make it easier. It just gives you a longer runway. You still have to face that day. I tell people, it doesn't matter if you didn't play in the NFL. It doesn't matter if you played a little bit in college or what type of career you had. We all have to stop playing one day. Right. We have to answer, like, what am I going to do next?
Yeah. Like you said, that runway is there, and people sometimes don't give credit for it, but I sometimes say, like, the longer you play, it's actually harder to transition because you get more, like, indoctrinated into, like, the NFL way of life. Sometimes it's better if it's, like, one and done. You get to get into it because I was at that 6-year point where it was just, like, right in the middle where, the identity starts getting warped into it, and it's like, this is what you know. And it's like, I knew what I wanted to do wanting to work in football, but, like, the actual tactical steps, I was like, man, if I knew what I wanted to do, what the hell is everybody else doing that I know is still trying to figure it out? Like,
right.
Did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Man. No, I had no idea. Didn't even know what that meant. No idea.
Oh, take me through that journey. So how did you like kind of jump into it head first?
Oh, I knew I wanted to get into business.
Okay.
Well, I'm a head first type person, right? Like, and so that's why I was open with, like, I wouldn't tell myself anything, just go figure it out, bro. But, I think that attitude and appetite, did propel me forward and help me navigate those difficult times because I'm no stranger to, like, figuring things out, like creativity, trying new things. I'm not afraid to do that. And so I just had to figure out, like, how that was going to materialize for me because I didn't know. I just knew I wanted to get into business. And what does that mean? Like, what type of business? What do you
take me through those tactical steps. You come out, you're like, all right, business is it. Like, I got the big thing of business. What's the first thing you want to do? You want to do you feel like you need to educate yourself, or did you start working?
Got an MBA.
When got your MBA? So that's the first number one step.
Yeah, and that was helpful, but it wasn't helpful.
Oh, tell me about it. Why wasn't it?
Because it doesn't give you you get smart, but, like, do you know what to do with your smartness? And so, there was no, like, career programming or hiring program associated with my MBA program. So I just had an MBA and still had to go figure the other side of the equation out. But long story short, just had an appetite for risk, had some exposure to venture capital and startups, and basically said, I want to try my hand at that. I got a little bit of money. I think I'm smart some days. And I have an appetite and an interest in, like, figuring out the future. And so, one thing that I knew is that people will take my phone calls and they'll answer my emails. And so I was very proactive in reaching out to folks, cold emails, saying, like, hey, can you carve out some time to talk to me about X? I did that for a while. Okay. And what that did was it helped me learn, it helped me build my network, which is ultimately really important. And it just broadened my exposure and played a really important role for me getting here today.
Oh, that's amazing. So, like, when you finished business school, and you just started dialing numbers to kind of get a next pathway where you're going. Did you know what kind of what business sector you want to get into?
No, I was just reading a bunch and learning about different industries. Like, what I just generally have a knack for, like, what's new or what's up and coming. and that's like a discovery type thing. Like you have to be proactive in figuring out like what's the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been like really good at that. And so it was a lot of that that really helped me during that process.
Oh, that's cool. Especially when you say you had a appetite for risk and all those different things. When you get into business, like sometimes it's a level of scratching that itch that you have from football. Where it's like, all right, I'm used to living on the edge like this. Like, where can I find it? At least that's where
can you find that at?
Where
right?
can I
But you got to make sure that
man?
you're prepared, right? So like you don't go into a game not knowing your playbook. And
right,
so
exactly.
I had to go out and figure out some new plays and like, all right, how do we play this game? And right. So I spent a lot of time like studying and understanding that the moves that people were making and trying to apply them to my situation.
What was the key to getting on track during the process where you were able to like transition back into your actual athlete instincts? Or did you have to do like a level of rebranding when you wanted to kind of get into the business world, or kind of like take me through that process?
No, I think it's just really like, it's an element of leveraging that aspect of like, yeah, I'm an athlete. Yeah, I played in the Super Bowl. I've done a lot of cool things, right? But then understanding that that's what will get me where I want to go, but it won't necessarily keep me there, or it won't, when I get to where I want to go, like, is it making an impact, or am I extracting the value out of that situation? So understanding like how you can most efficiently get to a place, but then ultimately understanding that, and I call it just like the art of conversation, because people will talk to you about Jay Cutler or about Ben Roethlisberger until they're blue in the face, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but like, let's talk about this,
right?
And so that's where like the element of preparation comes in. And say like, look, I'm knowledgeable about things outside of football, and I could have a conversation with you about real estate. I could have a conversation with you about Bitcoin or whatever it is. Like you don't feel like you have to talk to me about the football stuff all the damn time.
Right. That's big. And I would agree with you on being ahead of the curve when it's like things coming up, because it was just like a time we're going to get into it about your first company or your first venture that I knew about was Swizzle. And it's like, I remember being on vacation somewhere and they had paper straws, and I'm like, man, this is blowing me. Like I was like, I can't finish my drink. It's ripping apart. Next thing I know, money's coming out with a steel straw company. And I'm like, this is genius. Like, this is perfect. I'll use it. I'm looking for my cup right now because I still use my Swizzle straw till this day. And so does my wife. So tell me a little bit about founding Swizzle and like how'd that come about?
Yeah, it was just really finding a small but big problem and providing a solution. That's what business is. Absolutely. Identify a problem, opportunity, and provide a solution. Had no idea that would be something that I would be doing in my post-NFL career, but it's not necessarily about that, and not being hung up on what I thought I should be doing. You just have to open yourself up to opportunities. And that's one thing that I've always been really good at, is just making myself available to whatever is in store for me. And it's generally worked out. And Swizzle is a really good example of that. So we got started on that company, and it was just an opportunity for me to learn how to actually run a business instead of investing into a company. And right. I spent some time doing that, had a really good operational partner, and a guy named Phil Cosgrove, who really effectively ran a business. But I learned a ton from him, and we had a good outcome with that. Like we sold the company in like 2.5, 3 years, and so I had the honor of saying I sold a straw company.
Sold a steel straw company, man. That was amazing.
Never thought I would say that, but here we are.
Great straws, by the way. I mean, anybody that listens, like, I can't drink water or anything without I got the cocktail straw and everything. So people are like, what are you doing? Like, they call me bougie at the office sometimes, but whatever. So we go into now like Alkeme Health, man. It's a groundbreaking company looking to make an impact in the mental health of the Black community. I love that because we all know it's needed, a lot of different things that we kind of face. What inspired Alkeme?
I talked about like that transition and it being hard, and what made it hard. And I talked about like the what I was doing professionally, but the personal side of things is what really culminated in me realizing that Alchemy needed to be brought into the world. And so, the hard part is like, who am I when I'm not playing football? Who am I when I'm not tackling somebody? Who am I when I'm not running into or onto a field with thousands of people cheering, et cetera? And what am I going to do, and what brings me fulfillment when I'm no longer doing that. And when you don't have answers to that, you face anxiety, you face depression, you face identity issues, and I think most of us experience it in some different, there's varying degrees of that experience, but it's really, really hard not to experience it. And my experience was a little bit further on the, not extreme side, but it was above average.
Yeah.
And so, I was trying to get help and support and found it really challenging to get help and support, and found that was a huge contradiction, because if I needed help with my knee or my shoulder or my back, I could probably get help for that. But I need help with my emotions and my mind, and particularly as a Black man, trying to figure out like how to navigate these waters, didn't have it. And so that personal experience and then the professional experience of me being in the startup space and seeing ideas come to life and seeing how money flows and seeing what gets funded and knowing how to start a business and doing that, it was a perfect match for like my life experience. And so, I just saw the huge need and hole in the marketplace and said, well, there goes my next business and opportunity, and got started.
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Even when we talk about like the start point of, I guess, your emotional journey, or even my group, LIG Sports Group, stands for like Life is Good Sports, because I always believe coming up in football or just in sports, everybody that kind of looked like me kind of operated or is coming from a different place, whether it's like trying to get to a better place. I got to save my mom from this. This is like my last thing. So there was always like an anxiety that football was placed under, right? Where it was like, I need to do this or else. It was never just like the joy of having fun or like the joy of playing the sport. And like a lot of times when you do that, that's when you get to see the opportunities. And when you're doing that, because like you talk to a lot of guys, I'm doing this to get my place out of here, financial troubles, you kind of get tunnel vision and like you get warped into that identity and different things like that. And just knowing that there's so many different things, and just the sport is a piece of it for that same reason, right? So you come out that you're mentally ready and emotionally to kind of take all the things that you gain from the sport and kind of use it to propel you through the next thing. So you got this big idea, like I'm going to affect the Black mental health. Now what? Like, how did you know like to go and like, all right, we need to raise money this way, do this, that way? Like, take me through a little bit of that.
Yeah. I mean, again, that professional experience where I was getting in front of venture capitalists, like networking, that was all like an important part of the journey, because I was interacting with these folks and not asking them for money. I was showing up as an investor just like them. And so, I'm a Black dude with a beard and curly hair showing up at a predominantly white investor conference, right? So they knew me, they built relationships with me. And so when it came time to get on the other side of the table, like I knew I had access to people. Like I have tons of emails for investor contact, and know how to get in touch with people and know how to tell a story about what I'm doing, which is the most important part of it. It's all about the story.
Right.
And so when it came time to actively raise money, it didn't make it easier, but it made me more informed about the process.
Being more informed gave you a little bit more confidence, and just like, all right, I could.
Yeah, it gave me confidence. And then, just again, having the access is half the battle. Like, a lot of unfortunately entrepreneurs who look like us don't even know where to start.
Right.
So I knew where the starting point was. I knew who the people were.
Just to jump in, you did legwork though for that prior, from like putting yourself out there, going to conferences, going to investor tables and different things like that, and making an impactful connection to be able to reach back out and then to answer the phone call or call back. Because just because you're there doesn't mean people are going to pick up your phone call just because you play football. There has to be something that you have to have some level of value that you're providing.
Nope. Not at all. So it was a unique combination of a lot of things going right for me. But those things ultimately go right because I prepare and make sure that, I'm doing as much as I possibly can, more times than not, to set myself up for success. Now, does it, even with me doing everything that I can, that does not make it an automatic shoe-in. I could definitely tell you that. But as far as like accountability and responsibility, you know, you just generally want to make sure that you're doing your part,
Right.
so that you can walk away with, I guess, quote, a clean conscience.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. So what would be the desired outcome for a customer that signs up for Alchemy?
That they become the best and highest version of themselves, whatever that means for them. Uh, we have an internal mantra around our goal is to meet you where you are and to help you to get to where you want to go. I don't know where you are on that spectrum, but I believe that, again, most people are on some sort of like health journey.
Right.
And so wherever you are on your journey, our desire is to meet you there and be a facilitator and help you take the next steps in your journey, whether that's you know, through a video on demand therapy session, a regular meditation practice, community interactions on our platform. Like we have a variety of different offerings to help you like be more proactive and unlock things within like your internal spirit, again, to help you be the best and highest version of yourself.
I think that's amazing, man. Because a lot of seeing people out full is definitely inspiring. And like, even when you talk, to go back a little bit when you said when you transitioned out, it was kind of hard to find help, just emotional help, along with being a black man, also being a black man that's accumulated some wealth and made it to the top 1% in another industry. Having someone that can even relate to the different things that you're dealing with is a hard thing. Because I know for my own story, like I tried, right? 3-4 years after I got out of the league, go to a therapist and like, it's not working. You're reading something that is not there. That's not what it is until the point where, you know, you go back and kind of keep going down that journey to where I had a successful relationship with a therapist for 2 years prior to me probably getting everything together and feel comfortable starting my business. So I think like the work that you're doing, I think is imperative, especially for people working in corporate America and just a lot of different microaggressions, different things that people are just dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And there's some little variables, like you said, with dealing with the black community that are just need to be addressed specifically. And the fact that you took, you know, the ownership and make that bold statement, or not even bold statement, bold move to build this company is, I mean, inspiring and nothing but kudos to that. So I love it.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah, no doubt. What type of players do you think, like going through the process and they want to follow the entrepreneurial path, your entrepreneurial path, what type of traits or the ideal personality would they have?
Curiosity.
That's a good one.
Creativity, endurance, and not physical like stamina. Physical stamina is important, but like the mental stamina. Starting a company is hard, and it requires. And I tell the team this: like it requires endurance, it requires excellent work habits, and it requires excellent recovery habits. And it's not cold tub recovery habits. It's not. You know, that's a part of it, right? But like, you know, like you got to make sure like you're good up here now, right? Because when you're in business, like this is a game, right? Like I can't go tackle anybody anymore. Right. I can't go pick a pass off anymore. Like I got to be functioning up here all the time. And so it's a different type of preparation and also recovery. Yeah, I would say curiosity, creativity, endurance. And then I always still say like self-awareness. And that's probably the most important one because there's a lot of different ways to make money. So with that in mind, do what's important to you and something that you care about. Just don't do it just to make a buck. Because I can tell you this for sure, there's a lot of different ways to make money. And if you're going to embark on a journey of starting something, that's hard, regardless of what you start. Right. And so whatever you start, you want to make sure that you're fully committed to, and that's something that you can buy into. And not doing it just because, you know, you think it's a lucrative opportunity.
That's a great answer, man. Curiosity, creativity, endurance, work habits, recovery habits, and self-awareness. I think I'm being stretched to build my own business, right? Especially when you talk about that mental endurance. I never had so many headaches from just like thinking out, am I thinking about this too hard? And then doing some design stuff, whatever the case may be. And self-awareness, like you're building a company, you're kind of captain in the ship, and you got to kind of be true about where you're going and what needs to be fixed, what needs to be refined, and different things of that nature. Great answer. So players like right now that are in the game and they want to, again, follow your career path, what can they do while they're in the game right now to kind of help get those contacts or kind of build up their black book for whenever it's time to transition out? And especially with the NIL landscape now, they can kind of operate as, you know, entrepreneurs currently.
Yeah, I think educating yourself about the world and what's happening around you, and stretching yourself beyond your scope. Like, football, sports in and out, right? And there's a great opportunity within sports business, but try to, as much as possible and as much as you're interested in, get outside of that bubble, figure out opportunities, or just learn about things outside of that. You don't lose anything by venturing out and learning something new and bringing that back to a space that you know very well. Like, there's never not going to, and that's why, I didn't dive immediately into sports. I'm like, man, I've been playing sports my whole life. I'm not going to forget this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this is not going to happen. And so, if you so desire, then you can go out into the world and bring that information back and help you within the world of sports. Or you could just find yourself in something new like I did and still like have fun and participate in sports at your leisure. There's no wrong way to kind of go about it. It's a win in both lenses. But yeah, man, it's just really stretching beyond where you are right now, trying to see the world as much as possible, get different viewpoints, and continuing to inform yourself about what's happening.
That's a great answer, because I would always go back to my just journey. And like, one of the best things that ever happened to me when I did jump into football right after, but I was with the Browns for like 9 months, but I was like burnt out. Kind of to your point, I was just like, all right, I'm sick of this right now. So I jumped out and worked in the healthcare industry for ATI physical therapy, was able to see like a merger and acquisition process go through up close and personal, kind of what you're saying, going outside, stretching myself and getting real world experience and being able to bring it back. So when I started working at Penn State and kind of bringing different targeting and acquisition processes from corporate America into college football to be able to have some success and get that itch in a different way and looking at the different opportunities in the business of football. So we talk about everything coming to an end. What's your career end goal?
I don't have one. I look at life through buckets and principles, and there's no like endpoint per se. It's about the journey, right? Because if we focus too much on the endpoint, then we'll get to an endpoint, and then we'll have to ask ourselves, what's next? And so, I look at life through 4 lenses. I want to do what makes me happy. It's really important. And / like have fun, happiness, have fun. I want to do what makes me healthy. I want to do what makes me wealthy, and I want to do what helps me take care of my family. Those are like the 4 buckets on how I evaluate things and ultimately, help me, categorize my life, right? Like, there's no end state to health. There's no end state to wealth. Like, people are like, how much money you want to make? I don't know. I want to be wealthy, right? Or what does health look like for you? Like, I can look at my 37-year-old self and say, as a 22-year-old, and say like, damn, bro, like, you can't bench 225 20 plus times no more. You ain't healthy. That's not true, right? Yeah. And so like, it's about the journey and understanding like your principles and where you are and how those things show up on your journey. And just continuing to use those as guideposts for your activities for wherever you are.
Man, that is a great answer. Doesn't have a career end journey because it's all about the journey, man. Having fun, healthy, wealthy, taking
bars.
Care of. Yeah, bars. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's going, that might be it, right? It's not about it, but having fun, healthy, wealthy, take care of your family, man. Thanks, Mundy, for coming on to the show, Blueprints of Success. As you said, man, lean into this process and understand kind of what you're going through. Like, you're talking about transitioning out, being an entrepreneur, and like keeping your curiosity, keeping your creativity, and your mental endurance, and just the different things going through the process, right? You had a nice journey going through Pittsburgh, transitioning to Woodland Hills, going to Michigan, West Virginia, landing in the NFL, right? Understanding going through this process, you have to be self-aware of where you are. There's going to be a lot of different things pulling you, distractions, and understanding like if you walk in your lane and who you are and your full self, that's the best way to kind of reach the desired outcome, man. We just really thank you for coming on. Like and subscribe to this video. When you guys get a chance, check out the Recruiting and Football Biz Masterclass so you understand everything and while you're navigating the recruiting ecosystem. Mundy, we thank you, man. Appreciate you coming on, and good luck with everything with Alchemy and changing the world with that, because it really, really is, because a lot of us living full and taking care of that mental do magic.
Oh, thank you, bro. Man, you're doing some really good work educating the next generation. It's really important that through our experiences, We just look to empower and serve and help people be better. So hats off to you as well.
Man, I appreciate it, man. Much respect, though, like as always.
All right, bro. Peace.